set auto-destruct sequence.
It's the time allotted that concerns me.
Recognize Picard, Jean-Luc, Captain. Recognize Riker, William T., Commander.
Maximum warp.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Warp Core podcast. It is I, UrzaMaster, joining me as always, Lord Uther. And we have Fert Derby, who's in the penalty box, shall we say. Q has been unkind to his camera setup, but he is joining us live via subspace. Welcome, gentlemen, welcome. Appreciate having you all here. And today we are talking the 9th entry into Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation. That is The Battle, our second confrontation with the Ferengi. And gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about in this episode. No Armin Shimmerman, but yet again we have some Ferengi going wild. Fert Derby, what can you tell us about this Ferengi-centric episode?
Help! I'm in a penalty box! No. Hello, gentlemen. Hello, Warp Core fans. Rest assured, although you cannot see me, I am fully clothed and waiting patiently on the bridge with Tasha Yar to discuss all of your favorite installments here at the Warp Core podcast. Just a quick reminder, everybody, as we are just in the infancy stages of the next generation, you're going to want to stay subscribed. You're going to want to get more of your friends subscribed. You're going to want to get complete strangers subscribed. We are doing something that I don't think anybody else on the internets is attempting. We are going to rewatch the entire run of the Bermanverse, Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek Voyager in the order in which they originally aired on networked and syndicated television. This is an ambitious map that we've laid out for 3, 4, maybe 5 years of Warp Core content, our 5-year mission, so to speak. And you're definitely going to want to join us for the rest of this year and early next spring. We'll be covering a lot of The Next Generation. Beginning next spring, we will have The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. And then way down there in 2027, we'll have Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And like I say, we're going to be going pretty much till the end of the decade. So stick with us, subscribe, like, do all those fun things, because we are just getting started here. We're barely into the midpoint of Season 1. It's Episode 8/9, depends on whether you count the splitting of Encounter at Farpoint into one episode or two. Some math will differ. It is The Battle. It was first aired on November 16th, 1987. So that man in the glasses, whom you can see on camera right now, he and I were 14 years old and high school freshmen still when this first aired on syndicated television. The director is Rob Bowman. This is the second episode for him. He made his debut on Where No One Has Gone Before. And it is the second episode for the writer, story by Larry Forrester. And Forrester, it's Larry Forrester. And Herbert Wright did the teleplay. Herbert Wright gave us The Ferengi and The Last Outpost, and he is considered the father of the Ferengi, as he's the one who basically gave them life and substance at Gene Roddenberry's instruction. We have Frank Cosentino playing the villainous Ferengi Bach, and I did not realize this because I had not seen all of these episodes up until now. But Bach will return in Next Generation Season 7, Bloodlines. So we'll probably be covering that in 2026. But the character will return. It will not be played by Frank Cosentino, however. He was recast. But the character of Bach, who's out to do Captain Picard, a naughty, he will return. So we'll keep an eye out for him there. This is the famous Captain Picard Gets a Headache episode. Apparently headaches are out of vogue in Starfleet with Starfleet Medical, but he spends much of this wishing that he could take 2 Tylenol and call Dr. Crusher in the morning. But then we are pulled into the past, where the dead are not at rest, and the past is not staying in the past, with the Battle of Maxia, involving Stargazer NCC 2893. And according to early episode drafts, this was supposed to be NCC 1701, the motion picture model Enterprise, recast as the Stargazer. They took a look at the model and they said, I don't think we can make this work. So instead, they kit bashed. They took a bunch of model pieces from other assemble yourself models, and based on existing ship from Picard's ready room, observation room, quarters, what have you, they came up with the design for the Stargazer. Supervising producer Rick Berman still taking orders from Gene Roddenberry at this point. He still didn't like the Ferengi as an adversary, but gentlemen, I think we can agree this second installment of them is a little bit closer to the mark. Not quite as way out there as we saw them in The Last Outpost. And so this is what we have. We have a Ferengi father determined to avenge the death of his son, and is using mind control and an orb that looks like right out of a prop from Mystery Science Theater 3000 to mess with Picard's brainwaves and drive him to a frenzied state. We have Data being dismissed by the Ferengi as secondhand merchandise. We have Wesley Crusher now in his junior Starfleet ensign uniform. So I don't know if the sweaters, those big orange sweaters, are coming back anytime soon, but at least now he's in proper bridge attire. And again, generally speaking, although the Ferengi are no Romulan, and they're no Klingon, and they're certainly no Borg, I think there were some steps here taken to try to make them a little bit more on the bad guy ledger side than the jumping around acrobatically on the planet's surface, as we have already discussed here on the Warp Core in their first appearance. So what did you gentlemen think of the battle, giving us a little glimpse into Picard's past and possibly future directions for the show?
I really don't think they were meant to be at least to me, it didn't feel like they were meant to be the bad guy. I feel like there was one guy who was kind of meant to be the bad guy, and I feel like the Ferengi. Now, again, I haven't watched DS9, so I can't speak to this too much, but it seems to me like they're using the Ferengi, at least at this point, as more of a. They can kind of go one way or the other, right? Like they're the comic relief still. I kind of feel, even though I know they seemed a little more edgy this episode. Excuse me. So I don't really think they were meant to be like the bad guys, though it seems like the Federation must have had a scuffle with them at some point, but
yeah, it definitely felt like they, in the first episode, were trying to make him out to be evil, but they came off kind of monkeyish and goofy, and almost like by this episode's filming dates and production dates, they're like, well, I don't think we're going to go to the direction we wanted to go with the Ferengi here, so it's just, we're just going to play it however it feels. And it came off, frankly, I think, this episode and the next couple start to really feel like the TNG we know and love. And these Ferengi really remind me of the Ferengi we're going to get to know in Deep Space Nine a little bit more. Excuse me. But one of the things I really liked was the idea of being able to kind of go back in Picard's history and give him a little more depth as a character. Because so far he's felt a little one note. Not in a bad way, it's just he's kind of come across as that sort of stoic captain, almost like this series was going to be about Riker, in a way. And I think that by giving him, and we'll see this in the next few episodes, by giving him a little bit more depth of character, the show does become a little more Picard forward, a little more Picard focused in a way, even though obviously we know that it's going to rotate around the cast and everybody's going to get a little bit of a role to play. It was nice to kind of finally see him get sort of a big break in a way that didn't feel like a pilot, like in the first couple episodes with Q, it almost felt like Patrick Stewart was on a stage trying to do a Shakespeare play a little bit more than being a starship captain. And it's really this episode you start to get to feel for him like you did for Captain Kirk. Like you sort of see him as a human more so than I don't like kids, shut up Wesley, although that comes a little later. But this episode in particular kind of, it humanized him. Like he's the target of this villainous Ferengi, and they actually pretty much get him. They got him dead to rights. It's just the rest of the crew kind of comes up on his behalf, and the Ferengi are sort of hapless. So I liked it. I mean, I really thought it was an interesting take, because I don't think you see Bill Shatner in this same position. If this was, just William Shatner and a new crew on a new Enterprise, Captain Kirk Sr. here probably, he's not getting, swindled by some Ferengi mind control device. He's, probably not having the regrets that maybe Jean-Luc Picard has about potentially blowing up some ship he didn't know what they were doing. And I like how the crew immediately sees through the lies. Like, there's really no questioning. Like, there's no way Jean-Luc Picard committed this horrible crime. Like, we know this is BS from the start, but they really actually have to prove it. So it's a trial episode too, without being an actual trial episode, which I thought was cool, because I love that trope from the original series, and now we've got this pseudo trial going on where it's like, hey, we're going to kind of cause a mutiny on your ship. And I thought that was really novel. I thought that was really modern Trekkie kind of approach.
I like the depth that they added with Riker having the discussion with the other first officer. I like the idea of them playing out what could be a real life situation where you have two captains that you don't know what's going on, and we know what our role is, right? We're obviously there to back the captain all the time, but when our captains aren't doing what they're supposed to do, I know my duty is to the ship. And so now I'm going to step in and reach out and see if I can figure out what's going on, because my captain, obviously, to your point, does not seem lucid or the captain that I know he should be. And then we obviously get that conversation between the two first officers where the Ferengi is saying, you know what, I'm going to look into this a little bit more. This isn't right. The idea of almost upholding your duty as an officer overall, right? So it doesn't make the Ferengi, it's just kind of hit me now, doesn't make them as comic-y as they can be. And that's the other thing I've wondered at times too, whether it's the Klingons being the tough guy all the time, which I will, by the way, argue this point this entire series, that Worf was the weakest Klingon first officer or Klingon security person I've ever come across, and I feel like they tried to actually remedy that in Picard a little bit, and they even realized it. But like, how do these? And then you got the Ferengi, who are the kind of the goofballs. But how does their technology develop to the point that they can take on the Federation, where we almost seem like the balanced character? It's almost like a D&D thing, right? Like where the humans, everything is spread out across their stats, and then you have you have dwarves who are really strong and right, but their other stats are lower. It kind of feels like that with some of these different races that we come across. And how do they get to the point that they can actually do something? So, why am I saying all that? Because when you come across the first officer like this, we can kind of get a feeling that, oh, you know what? On the surface, they're comic-y for our benefit, but there is some rank and file. There is some seriousness to them. That's why they possibly got to where they're at. So that was a piece that might seem minute, but I think really... like to Picard, adds depth overall.
Gentlemen, I'm all here for Dr. Crusher tucking in Captain Picard. I'm all in here for Riker having to leave his quarters with holographic women and just slyly saying, "You're welcome, ladies." So it's just the little touches like that. And I think, to Ursa's point, I really tried to imagine the contours of this episode as an original series episode. Kirk encountering an alien race and all of this. And I had a little difficulty with it. And I think that's one of the reasons that the Next Generation does take that step forward that we were able to get. Because whether it would be special effects issues of the late 60s or just how you were writing dramatic television and so on and so forth, I just feel that even something here that kind of only scratches the surface really can plant seeds that, like I say, in future episodes and future seasons can make these characters seem fully rounded and so forth. The best original series episodes were Kirk, McCoy, and Spock putting their heads together and coming up with a solution to a problem here. But here, those solutions are all over, right? I mean, it's Crusher, it's Wesley. I know there'll be eye rolls. It's Tasha Yar, it's Geordi, it's Data. Like, it truly does feel like a full family crew experience. And I think whatever your criticisms are of these early episodes, and I've been pleasantly surprised. I was expecting a much lower bar, I guess, based on years of people grousing that, it wasn't very good when it started. It's probably not transcendent Trek yet, but its heart is in the right place. The effects more than hold up even 30 plus years, 35, 40 years later. And this is, I mean, we'll push aside the cheesiness of the Orgy Planet Injustice aside. This is a show that I think is going to find its footing a lot sooner than people remember. And by the time it hits its stride in season 3 and season 4, and we'll discuss those as we get there, you've got not just a good science fiction television show, you've got a good television show. One that you could put on any drama footing, whether it's Mad Men or, Boardwalk Empire or NCIS or whatever your tastes may acquire. So, like I said, I've been pleasantly surprised. I was expecting sort of less competent, really, what the hell are we doing? But, it feels like with episodes like this that they're like, yeah, we can go this direction. We can push this a little. So
Yeah.
Let's address this real quick. We keep saying the big three from TOS is Kirk, McCoy, and Spock. And I might argue that there could be different big threes here for Next Gen. So let's start with Fert Derby, and then we'll go to Urza, and we'll swing back to me. In your opinion, and yes, you have to leave it to 3. You can't be like, no, there's 4 of them. Nope, we're not doing that. We're sticking with 3. No honorable mentions. We're not doing it. You got to pick 3. That's it. Fert Derby, who's your big 3? And yes, we don't have to, let's just take it as a whole. All right, all the seasons, the movies, everything. Who's your big 3, Fert Derby?
Well, there's an obvious parallel you can go there. Picard, Riker, and Data are kind of, stand out initially. But I would argue if we're going to just take the crew as a whole, I'm sort of partial to like Picard and Data and, maybe Geordi. I don't know. I feel like LeVar Burton, especially since we literally get to see his career as a Starfleet, like sort of rise through the shows, the movies, Picard, the wrap-up series. He doesn't get, obviously, there's not 15 Geordi forward episodes each season, but that's who I would like to see, just to kind of break it up a little. So Picard, Data, and Geordi will be my vote for 3.
That's pretty solid. I'm shocked. Nobody's coming forth and saying it's Wesley and what's her name? Oh no, why can't I think? Tasha Yar and it's Wesley, Tasha Yar, and Lieutenant Barclay. Like,
that would be your small 3 and not your big 3.
Right.
You might have to have that conversation.
Yeah, no, that would be a good one. Maybe for a later episode, maybe on a Tar Planet situation. I think my big 3, it's definitely Picard. I'm definitely going to go with Data. I think those two really are the main focus of the bulk of the show. And then you start to kind of get into the secondary with anybody else, except maybe Riker. And I think the reason why Riker makes the sense for the third is you have the whole Locutus thing, which we'll get into in later seasons. But I think throughout the series, Riker really becomes kind of the machination behind any of the other secondary storylines. Like you don't usually get Worf stories without Riker. You don't really get too many Geordi stories without Data. You don't get very many Dr. Crusher stories without Picard. And of course, Troy is always connected with Riker or Worf. I mean, there is a Worf Troy story, which they play very well out in Picard. And I shall make it a threesome. Jesus, do you even hear yourself? I love that line. I just died. Like every time I rewatch that episode, I giggle to death. But I do think this is the beauty of Next Gen is it isn't as clear cut. And I would even argue that TOS really and we talked about this a little bit throughout the original series, it really wasn't as central to those core three we got in the movies as it was, more of a core three centering on, Kirk, McCoy, and Scotty, really. I think Montgomery Scott was a bigger deal in a lot more episodes than even Spock. And that's weird to me. It's very bizarre. But then you only get George Takei in 20-ish episodes throughout the whole original series. I mean, I'm probably understating it, but it's just odd to think, I always think of the original series crew who go through all 6 movies with us as being this huge hinge on which the original series was founded. And when you open that storybook, inside those 3 screws holding the hinge together are our core 3. But there's the other 3 that you can't live without. TNG's a whole different ball of wax. I mean, it's that old plastic binding from the school books we used to have as kids, right? Like every character is kind of united in that spine of Jean-Luc Picard, really. But you really can't have a story of one without all of them being somehow connected. And even if Picard's only in the episode for a few minutes, and there's a few episodes where he's in there for like 2-3 minutes of the whole show, it's fantastic. To that you can have a series where the captain really doesn't have to drive the show. And I think that it was a good thing they did that intentionally, but I think unintentionally it created a real timeless show, because you get the people who are hardcore Wesley Crusher fans, and they exist. Why you get Tasha Yar fans still boggles my mind. Although I will say I'm kind of harsh on her, because I watched a few of these episodes, and where she's in 1 or 2 scenes, she does add a little bit to the episode. So there's maybe something there that it's not as bad as it seems, but it's still pretty bad.
Yeah, you're reaching, brother. I'm going to be the homer, and I'm going to go Picard, Riker, and Data. That just seems to be the big 3. Though I think when we get to season 2, little spoiler alert, I think they purposely try and force someone in there to mimic the big 3 from TOS, but we'll address that. And by the way, real quick, let's dedicate this show to George Takei. Oh my. Because his birthday is on Sunday, and he's going to be 88 years old.
Woo!
So, happy birthday, Sulu.
Happy birthday, George Takei.
This one's for you, my friend. And to us, we'll make you 3.5 out of the big 3 there, Mr. Takei.
I still want a Captain Sulu series. I think every Star Trek fan always has.
That's their biggest mistake. I mean, we've had, besides Star Trek 5, the other biggest mistake is not giving this guy his own series, because, and I've only seen
fly her apart.
Oh, come on. I mean, that was wonderful. And then just seeing the couple of clips that I saw on Voyager, I know we want to wrap things up here, but seeing a couple of clips of an episode, I think, of Voyager where it's I don't know if it's a time travel episode, I don't know what it is, but he gets to play the role again, and it's just typical masterful. Oh yeah.
Absolute masterclass in acting. The man is a legend. A legend. But for George Takei's birthday, I will substitute our usual Warp Core ratings for Brad ratings. So, out of 7 Brads, how many Brads do you rate this episode? Fert Derby.
Oh, I'm sorry, gentlemen. I was checking my Robinhood account. The battle gets a 5. I'm holding up 5 fingers, not on the same hand. It's not a 6 or a 7, but it's also not a 2, 3, or a low 4. Like I say, it shows promise. It gives us a direction. I will say that when Lord Uther and I were playing high school basketball as 14-year-olds, and he was showing me how to get schooled on the hardwood, he would often mutter under his breath, "Picard maneuver," and then be in 2 places at once as he was blowing by me to make a basket. So I will dedicate this not just to the birthday boy, George Takei, but to Lord Uther and his constant usage of Picard maneuver throughout our childhood and beyond. So it was kind of a big deal for him, and this is the first one that illustrates it so cleanly. So 5 warp cores, sorry, 5 Brads for
Brad.
I was gonna go 5, but I'm gonna go 5.5 because Fert brought up the Picard maneuver, because I feel like after this episode we get all these maneuvers, like they're called certain maneuvers. I don't know if there was a carbonite maneuver, maybe
Corbomite.
Corbomite. I always say carbonite. Maybe there was a maneuver there, but I feel like after this episode, the phrase or the part maneuver is used a lot more in different things. Yeah, I'm gonna go 5.5. I also, and I think we kind of had this discussion before. The one thing that's thrown me off at times is the lighting does not seem consistent. And I know when we get to Star Trek Generations, they purposely lit it the way they did, not for, not because they didn't know what they were doing, but I almost feel like they're trying to figure out the lighting throughout these episodes. So anyway, 5.5. 5.5 Brad.
Hey, I'm also always trying to figure out my lighting, so I get where they're coming from. I'm going to give this a solid 5 Brads. And hopefully George Takei gets a solid 5 of Brad for his birthday. Hey! It is okay to be Takei. Happy birthday, George Takei, on Easter Sunday. A poet and don't know it over here. The Ferengi, I think, it just, like, they have been established in this episode. Every Ferengi episode from here till Doomsday is totally rooted in this episode. They have erased this sort of weird monkey-like appearance from their first debut, and I think that's what really sends it home for me. The Picard maneuver is great. The ship-to-ship-ness of it all, the weird sort of guardian being that we met in that first episode, like, I think he'd be really proud of where the Ferengi have ended up, even though they're still kind of villainous. There's a streak of honor behind there, and I would say it's a precursor to Deep Space Nine. But yes, I like this episode. Hopefully, as we move forward into the rest of Season 1, we continue to be excited as we journey back out into the galaxy with a gallant crew of the Enterprise D and beyond. And hopefully you join us. Like, subscribe, share, drop us a comment. Who are your big 3 or little 3? Are you going to pick Vash? I'm thinking Vash. Maybe you're thinking Vash too. Make it so.